Well, hello there, everybody. It is time for the Thursday night Toypixx live stream. Thank you, everybody, for showing up, for hanging out, for coming by and saying hi for the replay crew. Here's the big question we're going to be answering tonight. What things do you think make for a great action figure photo? Is it a lot of background? Is it a lot of editing? Is it character dependent? What is it that you think makes for a great pick? Because that's the question that, like I said, we'll be answering tonight. It's something that's on my mind because I want to make sure that I'm doing the kinds of things that you all want to see me doing when it comes to the action figure photography. And here's the reason, here's the rationale. It's kind of for the overall Toypixx thing, but more specifically, as I continue to work on the website, I want to make sure that it is catered to all of you so that it's a place where people, I don't know if I'll have a forum, but it's a place where people just want to go to from time to time to see what's going on, what's some of the new stuff that's up, and all that. So that's where I'm at with it. That's why we're having this discussion tonight. And hey, it's going to help me maybe make some better stuff, make some stuff that I'm happier with, and shoot some stuff that you guys are happier with. And maybe we'll even talk about enough of this stuff to the point where you're all going to decide, hey, maybe I could try that with my picks too. So that's what we've got. Experience and talent. See, I'm guessing that's actually a good thing. That's what you enjoy, Harry. Let's see. Are there any specifics? Anything that's like, I don't know, like for me. So I called up, hang on. I, of course, haven't typed anything yet, but I have the Word doc ready to go. What I was thinking, oh, come on, share screen. Here we go. What I was thinking makes a decent photo. Let's see here. Photo recipes. Great googly moogly. I'm going to need to make this a little larger. There we go. I was thinking a few things that really help out. Background, foreground, midground. I like kind of seeing 3 layers in a photo. It almost doesn't matter where the main subject of the photo is, as long as you've kind of got a foreground, a midground, and a background. So those are a few things I like. I tend to like, now this is totally subjective. For me, I don't like really muted color. I don't know what it is. I've never liked grays. I think I brought up in the last live stream maybe. I've never liked grays. I've never liked pastels. So I tend to like a lot of contrast and color as well. In fact, those two should probably be on separate lines. And color, how about I'll be a little more specific here. Obviously, most of them are going to have color. Saturated color. There we go. So I'm kind of wondering what else here. And one of the things that I continually think about when I'm trying to figure this stuff out is the importance of dioramas, because dios are something that, like, if you guys follow, there's a photographer, you'll see him on Instagram, you'll see him on, what is it? I think he's on X as well. You'll see him there, and his name is Warrior Evans. And every shot he takes, the characters are fully immersed in the world that they're in. And I absolutely love that. Now, one of my problems is I'm pretty limited on dios. I've got 3 of them. And I don't have, like, my drawing table is maybe something like 4 feet by 3 feet. So I don't have a lot of depth to play with when it comes to the ones I do have. And I don't have tons of just stuff to throw in the photo. So for me, something that I really appreciate with all that, let's see, let's go with dioramas. And I think I'll also put Immersion. That'll work. And that's not to say, I'm not sitting here saying that those are the only types of photos I want to shoot or anything like that. I'd get pretty bored if I just shot one kind all the time. But those seem to me to be the ones that I gravitate to. However, I'm totally good with different backgrounds, like just a plain black background or the old white background for that whole. I was on the Transformers World 2005 boards a long time ago, and everybody called it the super clear, where it was just totally white. You never really saw a shadow, all that. I love photos that look like that as well. Woo! Face front blog, 100% agree on dioramas. Gotta get creative with props sometimes. Oh, yeah, for sure. And thanks for stopping by, man. Appreciate it. But yeah, so I'm trying to figure it all, just trying to figure it all out. What do we need? What kind of supplies do we need to make these things as awesome as possible? Pablo Lopez, Toybots Photography. What's up, man? Most important ingredient is in this recipe is lighting. Absolute facts. Ladies and gentlemen, he brings up a great point. When it comes to pretty much any shot that you're going to take, if it's not well lit, it's going to look kind of grainy. It's not going to have what you want to show seen very easily and all that good stuff. So I've got a few lighting tutorials on the page or on the channel here, so you can check out the action figure photography tutorials playlist. Holy crap, that's a lot of syllables. But yeah, I talk about lighting quite a bit. But with the right lighting, you don't even need an awesome camera. You don't even need like an awesome cell phone. You can get really good shots if you just know how to mess with lighting. So that's a good call. Definitely going to throw that in here. Whew. Let's see. You have arrived, Mirage. Thanks for stopping by, man. Harry, backgrounds are nice, but most of the time it's unfocused. Well, here's the thing. So when I'm shooting a shot, I guess that's almost sounds redundant, not quite. When I'm taking a picture, that's much better. What I do is I intentionally blur out the background so there's focus on the figure. So the background, I mean, I guess maybe what your point, maybe what you're saying a little bit here is it doesn't matter so much what's in the background, just that it's there. And I can see that, but something that I like is things kind of staggered, things a little more in focus as it gets closer to the figure and all that. So I don't know. I gravitate towards the immersion, and I get what you're saying that they're usually unfocused. Oftentimes, I mean, with me anyway, that's intentional just because the focus of the shot wouldn't generally be the background unless the figure I'm trying to get's in the background. And then you've got, oh, there you go. You can have a figure like way in the background, and then everything else in the foreground and the midground is super blurry. And then you've got the figure lit up ever so slightly, maybe just try and silhouette it a little bit. And there it is. There's the focus. There's the sneaky baddie that's actually going to do whatever. That would be fun. Now I'm just all over the place thinking about this stuff. It makes me happy. So what else? Okay, so when we're talking about figure photography specifically, there are some things that, anybody that has taken photography courses and been doing photography for a long time understands. There is the 3-light setup. It's pretty basic when it comes to lighting. You have one light that's called the key light, that's kind of the main light of the whole thing. And then you have the backlight, which kind of just obviously lights the figure in the back so that it kind of separates it a little bit from the foreground. And then you have the other light that just kind of fills in, the fill light, that fills in the shadow that's created with the key light, but it doesn't generally fill in that shadow with quite as much intensity as the key light hits the figure with, or hits the focus of the shot with. So there's the lighting like that you want to be a little cognizant of. It's just a really basic setup. but that's the rationale for doing the lighting in that way. So that's always fun to think about. But the thing that I was really going to start to say before I totally sidetracked myself is the book, How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, is invaluable. And you can usually find it on Amazon. I don't think it's very expensive. And it's invaluable because it talks about, when we're talking specifically about the action sequences in our action figure photography, it talks about angles and when, like, what part of punches and kicks and all that stuff you should show. So we talk about diagonals in just regular photography stuff so that we're directing your eyes towards different spots on the photo. When we're talking about angles with action figures, it's because it just adds tons of dynamism to the shot. And one of the things that How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way goes beyond that is it also says, don't show the kick or the punch or whatever connecting with the character. You show either the wind up, like the most extreme part just before the hit, or the most extreme part after the hit to really show the action in the shot. So those are some other considerations when it comes to at least specifically action in your action figure photography. That's why I'm constantly saying, guys, seriously, pick up How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. It shows you a lot of stuff that you can use for photography. The perfect background / figure balance is definitely a tricky thing. It is tough. It is tough. But when you can pull it off, it's one of those things that is, I don't know, man. It's hard to do. It is hard to do. And it's a lot of practice. One of the reasons that I'm starting to feel like I kind of know what I'm doing a little bit, because, you know, I'm sitting here talking about toy photography. I understand it from like a basic photo principles level. And because I was trying to be a comic artist, I understand it from an art background, from going to art school and all that stuff. But at the same time, I don't feel like an expert. I feel like there's always way more room to learn, way more room to grow. I feel like I have gotten to a point where some of this stuff is second nature. This isn't quite there. So this balancing the figures with the background gets a little tough, because how much zoomed in do you want on the figure? How much do you want zoomed out? Obviously, it's totally dependent on the shot you're trying to go for, but that also helps dictate where you want the focus. And it does get tricky when you throw a lot of stuff in there. That's why warehouse shots are nice. You can usually keep stuff around the edges. Raj, majority of my current pics are taken outdoors. I have to find a good location, though, around my house for a good shot. You know, I put up, before this live stream started, I've been putting on X / Twitter, like a kind of a themed photo every day. And so this one was your military action figures and go, you know, like, so people are sharing a lot of G.I. Joe pictures. One person put up Star Wars, like the Stormtrooper teams. One person, I'm sure that I'll end up with some Action Force stuff by the time this is all over. And so what's going on there is people are finding spots outdoors that look incredible. So I'm sure you can pull it off. My problem is I'm kind of dumb, and I ended up getting figures that I don't want to take outside all that badly. And yet I know that some of the coolest shots you can get, especially with G.I. Joe, are like outdoors and some overgrown brush and all that stuff. Oh man, I do love shooting outdoors. I just need to do more. I need to figure out how to be able to do it more, I guess. I have that book. Never thought to use it for my figures, though. Interesting. Yeah, man. It's cool. And I think the reason that I find that it kind of correlates with all this stuff is because you're trying, I mean, at least for me, I'm trying to get kind of a comic book look in my photos. So as that book is explaining how comic panels could work and how things are drawn and all that, it's in the back of my mind that, okay, how would John Buscema or Buscema, anybody know how to pronounce that, by the way? How would he draw this panel? So that stuff's always there just because of that weird combination of life experience, I suppose. Raj, my background slash outdoor is a brick wall near the gate that I can excuse as some buildings wall, let's see, and a blacker wall behind the house. Oh, all right. So you can do like a nighttime shot. Who here, does anybody use photo editing? Like, is anybody here like a graphic designer that does use Photoshop or anything like that? Because with a black background, like a wall or something, you could get a picture of a moon and just put it on there and set it to screen, and it would be a pretty cool look. Spaded one. I like to party. I do too, Spaded one, and thank you for stopping by. But I'm guessing that wasn't exactly where you were going with that one. I also add a small fog in Photoshop with low opacity to sell the look more. I am surprised that I managed to fool people more than twice with 2 of my images into thinking that it is real. Mirage, that is awesome. I want to tell you, since you use Photoshop, I didn't bring it up for this reason, but now that you said that, I have on the Toypixx Patreon page, and this isn't everything that is there to help you guys with photos is totally free. So if you go to the Toypixx Patreon page, I've been creating a lot of effects and a lot of graphics that you can use on your stuff. I've got some smoke plumes there. I've got a little bit of haze. I've got a lot of stuff that you could grab, and it's all got black background. So if you use Photoshop, you can just set it to screen and you can put them on your photo and try to mess with it like that. So if anybody's looking for effects and graphics, backgrounds, all that, it's on that Toypixx Patreon page. Hey, comic covers or page panels are really good reference for setups and shots. This is true ironic bionic, and thank you for stopping by, man. I appreciate it. Yep, it is absolutely key. One of the things that I use a lot of comic reference for, because I still haven't figured it out, as many comics as I've read in my lifetime and for how long that life has been, I still can't just pick up a Spider-Man and pose him so he looks like it's a Spider-Man pose. Although I did do that with my black costume Spider-Man recently, and I think it ended up okay. But most of the time, I'm constantly looking up Todd McFarlane art with Spider-Man so I can try and hit a pose with a Mafex figure as closely as possible. So that is a good plan. That is a good, I'm even going to add that because I didn't even think to say it. We're going to add it a little here, though. Nah, we'll put it with the main stuff. Why not? Let's see. Comic cover. Bingo, bingo. And a slash. It doesn't need to be there. Whew. There is much chatter. I like it. When I'm in the mood to be looked at funny, I'll go to a park for different shots. I laugh because I did that with a Thor once. I went to a park, was taking a picture, and this old couple was just looking at me like, what the hell's he doing? It's kind of funny. I just waved. I'm like, oh, hey, I'm taking a picture of this toy. They thought I was nuttier than I am, I think. It is understandable, though, because I used Kamen Rider figures, and they can look so accurate to the actual suit that you can be fooled if you don't look at the joints. Man, I'm assuming you're going with the SHF ones. Those things are amazing. Like, SHF just seems to knock it out of the park with their Kamen Rider stuff. And I don't even watch the show. I just look at them and I'm going, whoever is doing the Kamen Rider line for SHF, they love Kamen Rider. Like, it's clear because those are some phenomenal looking figures. Like I said, man, I don't know anything about Kamen Rider, and I kind of want to check it out based on those figures. Actually, Graywall, come to think of it, whoops, that's okay. You can use, since you have Photoshop, you can use a selective color adjustment layer and make that gray. You can make it a little darker. It's good times. Go to the neutrals and make it a little more black. Now, other neutrals are going to go towards black too, so you have to be careful, but it can happen. See, yep, I use Photoshop. Pablo, awesome, man. That's good to hear. So if you, I assume you heard me just talking about Patreon there. If you guys need any effects or anything like that, honestly, it's just, I think I have the link in the description, but if not, just go to Patreon and type Toypixx and you'll find all the things. One thing that I would suggest you probably do, depending on what you're looking for, go to the very first post on the Patreon. There's like the first 2 or 3 posts, there will be full on image, like all the photos I take, I put up the PSD files and I put up the high-res JPEG files so that if you guys like them, you can have them. And if you want to see how I structure my files, you can have the Photoshop files as well. But then I also put in graphics, I put in effects, and I put in backgrounds. So you'll be able to click on the links in those first few posts and see all of those things that I put together. And any of them that you decide you want, go for it. I'm setting up a TV to use for my digital backgrounds. That is awesome, man. We were just talking the other night about using a monitor. Like, I want to get a dedicated monitor to just put on the back of my drawing table to use as the background. I think that would be awesome. And I could change it to whatever I wanted. I could use one of those backgrounds I created, throw it on there, and be good to go. I think that's a great plan. I really like it. And I really like it probably because I thought I made it up. Clearly, I didn't make it up. But yeah, I think that's awesome. In fact, I was at Meijer today, and for those of you who don't know what Meijer is, it's basically just a slightly smaller Walmart. And there's a 63-inch TV, and it was like $500. And I'm going, you know, for just a monitor for photos, that'd be pretty sweet. But then I'm going, yeah, but I have to buy figures to put in front of that. What do I do? How do I balance? I've gotten into making my own dios and niches and stuff for my display. It's a super rewarding little corner of the hobby. Spaded one, I want to get into that. We talked a little bit about me possibly putting up videos of me building a dio. I haven't started it yet. I haven't really had time to do it. But what I'm going to do is this coming week, I'm going to work hard on the website. And if I can get it pretty close to done, then after that, I'm going to need to start recording some more content for YouTube, obviously. I've only been doing the live streams the last month or so. So one of the things I've thought about is, wouldn't it be nice to build a dio and start showing people how I'm doing it? Even though, fair warning to everybody, it would be my very first dio. So it's not going to be very good, but you would see probably all the steps I take to make it, along with all the mistakes. But yeah, that's awesome because you can make any any background you want and then any foreground you want. It's phenomenal. See, dios and benches. Gotcha. I wondered what was going on. Mr. Matson, send an IG image with the pronunciation guide to the Marvel names. Good man. Thank you, Mr. Matson. Because, yeah, Buscema, whatever. I don't know. I hope I've been pronouncing Jim Lee's name right. Basefront blog. I went to school for graphic information technology, learned a bunch of helpful Adobe skills to help with my videos and photography. That's awesome, man. One of the things, even though I went to school and it was only a semester of Photoshop, so it wasn't like I was the man with Photoshop or anything. But when I started a gig, maybe, I don't know, it was a while back, like it was probably a little over 15 years ago. I had never used adjustment layers. If you've never used adjustment layers, they are a game changer. So if you haven't used them, look into them. They're really awesome. You don't have to just I would have to keep making, like I would make adjustments on one layer and then put that on the next layer and then adjustments there and put the full image. So the files got huge. You don't need to do that with adjustment layers. Tragic. Hey, Dave and chat. Hey, Tragic, man. Thank you for stopping by. So what do you think? What makes a great photo for you? A great action figure photo. What are the components? The recipe for it. Although I go to college for digital media stuff, which includes photography, all I do is actually self-taught from taking on many sus 3D anime screenshots. No, you know what? I can't really say the same thing because I only took a semester of photography. My folks were into photography. So I was kind of into photography before I went to college. So I can't sit here and be like, yeah, I got the same thing out of photography, but I will tell you, I learned way more after school than I actually learned in school when it comes to skills. So what you're doing actually probably puts you ahead of the game. A lot of my inspiration comes from Frank Frazetta and Robert E. Howard's paintings and covers. That's sweet. That is very cool, man. Yeah, that's something. Do you guys use a lot of cover reference when you're taking photos? Raj, yeah, I use the SHF, but if the 1/6 figures, then oh boy, that would be almost impossible to tell if it's fake or not. Yeah, I bet, man. 1/6 scale, do they even I mean, I assume they've got actual cloth goods and all that. I don't think I've ever seen a 1/6 scale Common Rider figure. Another tip, regular everyday items can be used in cool ways like cheese grater or a colander to shine light through. Use incense sticks for smoke. Ooh, volumetric lighting. That is sweet. I never thought about the incense sticks and the colander. That's a great idea. Ooh, ironic. I like it. I appreciate it, man. Thank you. I tell guys on this chat quite a bit that I know the photography aspect of everything, but it's the imagination to do stuff like that that throws me off. Let's see. Oops. Colander / cheese grater. For light. I like it. I think that's a really cool idea. And then incense for smoke. Now, do you find that that hurts your figures at all? That's something that I'm always concerned about. I actually have some of that, what is it, atmosphere aerosol, but I don't want to use it on my pricier figures because I don't know what its impact is going to be on the plastic. I tend to use my favorite artist, Masami Obari's works as a reference. His stuff is very dynamic, but hard to replicate with something like Marvel Legends to their articulation being less dynamic. Well, that's why you get amazing Yamaguchi or Mayfix. Now I'm just letting my snob show. But I've got to look into, I don't know if I know that artist. I'll look into him. What does he do? Like what's the main stuff he works on? Forced perspective is something I want to get the hang of. Man, you know, I sit here and I say, come on, McFarlane Toys, you should make these things 1/12. But with forced perspective, as long as you're not showing the feet, because that can get really tricky, you can make them look like they're the same size as everybody else. It's just going to be with focus. It's going to be with a lens. I find that like the lens that I'm using right now, and I'm only bringing up lenses because it looks like we can all get lenses for our smartphones now. But one way to really make forced perspective work is to use a telephoto lens. I mean, that's one way that I've found really helps. And that is the one I'm using is a 75 to 300 millimeter lens, and it kind of flattens everything. So I think that would help quite a bit if you have something along those lines. Or Harry, if you're just using a smartphone, see if you can find a smartphone lens equivalent to do that. And it's possible droids can just do that kind of stuff now. I'm sitting here with an iPhone, and I found out a while back from many of you that I basically have old technology for photos, which ticks me off because Apple used to be the place to go for the graphic type stuff. Raj can work wonders, however, for Rebel Tech, which looks so Obari inspired that I'm not surprised that Yamaguchi and him are friends. There you go. All right. I guess I didn't need to bring up amazing Yamaguchi or Mayfix. Can you sometimes grab a decent TV or monitor at a thrift store? Or you can sometimes grab a decent TV or monitor at a thrift store. I bet, you know, I didn't even think of that, but you're probably right. That's a great idea. Especially, I mean, it's not like you're using it all the time. You're setting it up for photos. Like a TV can burn out. I mean, a monitor can burn out if you use it all the time, but this you wouldn't. That's a great idea, Ironic. Thank you. One thing I want to get into is weathering figures, making the details pop. You know, yeah. Here's a question I've got for all of you. So as I'm building the site, I want to start bringing in more creative members of the community, of the toy, you know, the toy community, because it all ties together into great photos. So I want to bring in some of the guys that are making dios. I want to bring in some of the customizers and some of the people that are making parts and all that stuff. And, you know, a lot of the people that are doing the weathering and all that. I want to talk to these people. Would that be something you guys are interested in for not only the website, but also for future videos? Because again, with toy photography being the ultimate goal, what their work does is it really helps the photos. Off topic, I got my hands on a Renew Your Vows Spider-Man fig today, so consider me a feet guy for at least the next week. Okay, will do. He's got the toes. He's got the toes, people. The 1/6 Common Rider figures are either 3-0 or a Real American Hero, and yes, they use real cloth. I said Real American Hero because that's what I think of with RAH. What is RAH, Mirage? I can't remember what that is. But I do love the 3-0 Transformers, so I'm guessing it's quality, at least on that end. Hot Toys even made 2 figures for Kamen Rider Black Sun. Huh. Yeah, I feel like Kamen Riders, those are some figures I need to pick up. Oh man, other than the figure in a dynamic pose, lights, dioramas, and 1/12 accessories, mini fog machine. See, I've looked into those. That's a good call too. I will put that in here. I've looked into them, but I can't find any that just say water. Like there's some chemical that's added to the water, and again, I'm paranoid about what it all might do to the plastic. But if somebody can point me to one that doesn't have any kind of chemical and just says water, I would love to do that, because the way that I'm getting my smoke is actually creating the smoke in Photoshop or using Midjourney and then throwing it in the photos. I am totally paranoid, guys. It's me. He mainly works on mecha stuff with a lot of dynamic shots, even when the character is just standing. That is sweet. That is cool. That's something I liked about McFarlane's work, is Spider-Man could just be standing there and you can see movement in it. So I will definitely look this guy up. Thank you, Mirage. Tragic. I wouldn't use any kind of smoke or incense, only because it will make the figures stink and may hurt the resale value, in my opinion. I've seen some negative reviews for sellers on figures that smell like smoke. Yeah, I get that, and that's why I wondered about the incense. The smoke, like I wouldn't use just smoke. I was trying to figure out, I want to know, like the fog machine specifically, I just want to know if there's any of that stuff out there that doesn't use chemicals. And hence why instead of incense, I use just Photoshop effects like the fog I mentioned. Yep. That's it. An incense burner in the diorama base with smoke coming out of a grate or manhole. I wonder. I could see you could probably make the light bounce a little bit. I mean, you could definitely do that if you had some, like the light going through the manhole, or the manhole. If you had light going through the colander, the grater, whatever, and then smoke just kind of in the scene itself, you could totally play with the light bouncing all over the smoke. But again, I want to know practical effects for smoke that aren't chemical, you know? It's driving me crazy. You're a genius. Which one's the genius? A lot of you guys have been geniuses tonight. Sure do. It will be interesting. Excellent. Real Action Heroes. Thank you, Mirage. It is also a Metacom brand like Mafex, and they also do anime articulated figures in that scale too. Oh, how do I not know? I need to learn more. I basically just sit in the 1/12 scale area or 1/10. See, I love Smoke Ninja. Smoke Ninja. What is that like a brand? or is it not? And I don't know what I'm saying. Mr. Matson, I use a TV, comic book art, etc. I use a lot of Frazetta art. Man, the way you guys all talk about Conan, I can see that. And I do love Frazetta art, so I can't even judge. Most fog machines use a glycerin solution. That's what I was saying, is what does glycerin do to plastics? Maybe that's the question I need to ask. Yes, I have a couple. I can spare one to you. Water-based fog. Really? It's just water. Let's see, for practical smoke, some use cotton. I've seen the cotton. My thing is sometimes, depending on what you want to do, the cotton, you either can't get it far enough from the figure or get it close enough to the figure to make it work. So, and one of the reasons is when I first started doing all this stuff, I was using cotton quite a bit. And Mom has always been one of my favorite critics because she's not going to sugarcoat anything. I'd take the picture and I'd show it to her, and I had some distance or it was close or whatever, just trying to really blur it, really trying to get the aperture super high so that the cotton would just totally look like smoke. And every time I take the shot, she'd look at it and she'd go, okay, looks good, but why is there cotton in the background? Like, oh yeah. So I've taken to doing a lot more with Photoshop. I don't blame you because I don't do 1/6 either. But the RAH figures are amazing. And there was one Hot Toys figure I wanted before BuzzMod said, hey, we made that dude in 1/12 scale now. How is BuzzMod? I've heard different things about BuzzMod. Cool beans, Tragic. Thanks. That's awesome. It's good to know. All right. So let me go in with, let's get rid of just my own little, like I say, this is about you guys. This isn't about me. So I'm going to keep saturated color, but I'm going to get it away from what all of you guys are talking about here. And I'm going to get, you know what? No, I was going to remove contrast. Here's a little cheat code that I've noticed on Instagram and all the other stuff in case you guys are trying to get more views and all that. Contrast stops the eyeballs. Like people are scrolling, there's crazy contrast, they stop, and they're more likely to like the stuff. So I think, considering we're in the age of social media and we're trying to do really cool stuff and all that, I think I'm going to keep contrast on here just because I think it's really helpful for all of us. I think the background, the foreground, and the midground, I think all of those are crazy important. And that's just general photography stuff. That's not even necessarily action figure photography stuff. Contrast, dios, and immersion. I think as a general rule, which I do want to, let's even, again, way back when I said I don't like rules because, you know, rules are for the other people, not us. I'm thinking of all this more as guidelines, but as a general guideline, I think dioramas and immersion are a good thing. Lighting, obviously. Comic cover reference. As a general guideline, I don't know that that needs to be there if we're talking about things that are just necessary in photos, but it certainly needs to be a consideration if you're not quite sure what to do with the posing. You want to look at some of that stuff. Colander cheese grater for light. I really like this. It's not absolutely necessary for every shot, but I will totally be trying that trick out. So again, these are little things that I think are things that we need to keep in mind, things we can keep in our toolkit. Incense for smoke, mini fog machine. I'll tell you what, we'll leave the incense for smoke, but that's going to be at your own discretion. I mean, I don't plan on selling any of this stuff, but I also don't like things to smell smoky. So there's that, the mini fog machine. I think if we can find a mini fog machine that is just water, then I think that is the way to go, because water's probably not going to damage too much of what we've got. Watch out if you're using a lot of die cast, but if we're taking a picture of most of these plastic figures, I think we're going to be okay with water. Now, if we're looking at just the general guidelines, background, foreground, midground, contrast, dioramas, immersion, lighting, I think something else that we need to think about are angles. Again, that just depends on what you're trying to achieve. But I think for when we're talking about action figures and we're trying to put action in these photos, we generally don't want something just straight across, unless what's the shot called that's always kind of funny? Just the whole group shot, the posing. I think it was Rocket in the first Guardians movie. He said, here we are posing like a bunch of, anyway, that kind of shot. Then you can pretty much flatten it out and just make everybody look like they're on the same level. Think Jim Lee art when it comes to, say, a group shot of the X-Men, where they're all just standing there they just busted through a wall or they're about to fight. That's when you don't need to worry about angles so much. But I think overall, angles are an important thing to throw in here when we're talking about action figure photos. Something else that I think you want to think about, and clearly I'll need to organize this or arrange it a little differently, is the action. And I'm putting it down here because you don't necessarily have action in every action figure shot. But again, the way that How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way talked about it is you go at the start of the punch or you go at the follow through of the punch. You never want to draw or shoot the picture when the punch is like connecting, because there's just not as much action there. Everything would look pretty flat. But after the punch is connected, now the arm is just at an angle. The head of the person that just got punched is kicked back like this. There's just a lot more dynamism in that shot. So we've got all this. Can anybody else think of, we're going to call this one, I'll even go caps lock on this. Can anybody else think of anything that we would call maybe a general guideline for all that? And then we'll get more into sort of the more nuanced stuff. We'll even call this stuff, maybe not nuanced, nuanced. Words are hard. Let's see. I'll just go things to consider. Alrighty. So we've got two, oh, bold, you fiend. We've basically got two things here that we're talking about. Can anybody think of some general guidelines? And after we go through any of those, we'll check out things to consider. All right. And I'll catch up on the chat. Yeah, cotton with an LED behind it. You can even use a dry brush or an airbrush and use black-gray colors. Huh. I wouldn't have thought about that. Cotton with an LED behind it's pretty cool. I do like the look that a lot of people use with that. I don't own a single BuzzMod figure yet, but they seem to be pretty good from what I heard, if the hype has died down lately, because Tamashii Nations has been really stepping it up with SHF. Man, they have been putting out a lot, I've noticed. I still don't have, like, the only SHF I have are the Luke Skywalker from Mando and Darth Vader from Return of the Jedi. Let's see, water might be bad because of the moisture, and if it is next to a dio, it will not be good. Long term, even if the dio is coated with a sealer. That's a good call. It would probably be okay with the figures, depending on if we're talking figures with cloth goods and all that. But if you're talking about a dial, yeah, like an extreme sets dial, and you've got a water-based fog machine, I'm wondering, that could be tricky. That could be tricky. And like I'm looking at, well, yeah, there we go. I've got a dial that High School Creations made that I've had for several years now, and it's starting to chip away just a little bit at the cement or at the ground of it. You're starting to see the material through the paint. So if you're going with the water, you're probably going to liquefy that paint a little bit and maybe smear it. So I would say that's probably the best for figures, but Tragic brings up a great point that it might not be the best depending on the dio you're using. Might be you want like the plastic dios for that kind of thing. Let's see, using glass panel for flying and objects. That is I saw that, I think the first time I saw that was one of Warrior Evans' things. And I thought that was genius. That is an awesome idea. And if you guys haven't, I almost started typing genius. And if you guys haven't, for flying, seen anything like that, man, what picture was it? Was a while back, so I'm not even going to be able to tell you who to look for. If you notice some character that's flying, oftentimes that was the trick that was used, and it's a really great idea. Something else, since Tragic brought that up, I'm going to throw in here, wire for balance. Now I use copper wire just because it's pretty bendable, but also strong enough to hold on to the figures. And so usually what you can do with wire is go in right basically at where their hips meet their butt, you know, like where their legs meet their butt. Usually depending on the pose you've got it in, you can shove a wire in there. That is really violent language for where I'm talking about here. But you can put a wire in there and find a way to balance that wire a little bit, or balance the wire or balance the figure on the wire. And then what you do, the trick is you take the shot of the figure with the wire, then you remove the figure and the wire, take the exact same shot, and then you can just mask out the wire in Photoshop. So yeah, a glass panel for flying is brilliant. And I've been able to use a copper wire for balance and for jumping, flying, all that stuff. And it's worked pretty well for me. But the glass is going to be a lot less photoshopping. So depending on what you've got there, that might be something to try too. Yeah. I loves me that glass technique. With any residual fog juice on your figures, you can wipe them down. That's true. If you're not using like the cloth goods and all that. I'm just curious about what long term, even if you wipe them down, you know you'll miss some. That's what I'm curious about, you know. Should probably consider props, either in a character's hands or in the background to grab an eye. That's true. That's true. Props are something definitely, I think props should probably, if we're talking about dioramas and immersion, I think probably general guidelines, we want props up here as well. Like these are the things that we should consider in pretty much as a rule or as a guideline. These are things we should consider. Probably around 80% of our photos, we should figure these things. The whole 80-20 rule, you know? So there's all those things to consider here for all the other aspects of everything. I think we're getting a pretty good list. And I like a lot of the stuff you guys have come up with. For instance, Peter Parker's camera. A little thing like a camera can tell a whole story with a Spider-Man figure. Spaded one, you are not wrong. There is that Super Action Stuff arcade thing that they put out. I think there's 2 different versions, and each one comes with a camera where you can swap out the lens. That is so cool. I basically, what are they? They're like 35 or 40 bucks. I want to get that arcade and probably not, I mean, I'd use the other accessories, But the real accessory I want there is that camera and that swappable lens, which would basically mean it was a $40 camera and swappable lens. But you are absolutely right. I've got some stuff. I've got like wrenches and screwdrivers. I've got a crowbar, things along those lines that I use whenever I think they can work in a background. Like the crowbar obviously goes in almost every Joker photo. Any tips when using a smartphone for toy photography? Cal the Collector. Thank you for stopping by, man. I appreciate it. It depends on the cell phone you have or the smartphone. I have an iPhone, and something that's really helpful for me is putting it in portrait mode, because what that allows you to do is take the picture of the figure and then you can adjust the aperture. So you can make the background so that the background's really blurry. Not only that, but if you miss, so you tap on the figure, what you want in focus anyway, and then you take the picture, and you'll sometimes miss the figure by just a little bit. So when you go back to edit it in portrait mode, you can adjust the focus so it's on the figure again. And then you can adjust how blurry you want to make the background, the foreground, whatever. That's a big tip. Everything else is basically just lighting. So that's what you got. Now, one thing that's tougher, I would say if you're using a smartphone, we were talking about the wire versus the glass for flying and jumping and all that stuff. I would use the glass technique if you're using a smartphone, because unless you've got a hardcore tripod you're using with it, you're never going to be able to put it in the exact position that you shot the initial image in, which is like you need two images when you shoot the wire. So with a smartphone, use the glass. That way you can just get one picture and you're good to go. Everything else, there should be editing considerations in the phone. And at that point, you're just playing. You're just using, like with this one, I've got a lot of options as far as the type of, I don't even know what you would call it, kind of color styles perhaps. So I'd have a vivid, I'd have a dramatic, I'd have a dramatic cool and dramatic warm, you know, things like that. So you just play with those, and then you make sure you're playing with the sliders until you get a look you want. As for now, I just said all that in the context of an iPhone. If you have a Droid, it might be a little different. But like I said, a lot of people here have talked about how great droids are when it comes to the tech. And for the first time in my life, I've thought the iPhone has failed me. I might need a Droid. Tragic. I have a 6-gauge spool of copper wire for holding the figures too. Good call. Nice, Tragic. Yeah, copper wire is pretty much where it's at just because of how flexible it is. I actually take all my photos using the very phone that I'm watching the live stream plus commenting with. It does the job very well. That's one of the things that's amazing about smartphones these days. I had, before I have this one, I think this is a 13. I had an iPhone 7, and that thing couldn't do anything. But this 13, it's ridiculous how good they are. Ironic. Take a pic with phone upside down to change perspective. Oh, that's a good call. That's a good call. That way you get kind of, so when you take the picture, say the phone's like this, the figure looks way taller, and it's pretty cool. So that's a great call. I didn't even think about that. But you get kind of that imposing look. Like that's the kind of thing you would do for, say you're taking a picture of Thanos. You do this and Thanos just looks like this huge monster. Like you have one of the other characters down low, kind of like this, and Thanos is just towering over whoever it is. Dark side, you know. Thank you for the tips. I have a Samsung that lets me take 50mm RAW pictures. Oh, cow. Very nice. So you should, if you have a Samsung, I think you can mess with the aperture while you're taking the shot. I mean, you can do that with the iPhone while you're taking the shot, but a lot of people were saying there's just so much more you can do with a Droid. And so I would just play and maybe look online and see what other people are talking about. I can give you general tips, but those general tips are based on the iPhone. So I think if you can find something that mimics a mode where you can change up the aperture a little bit on your droid after taking the picture, I think that would be super helpful. Otherwise, everything kind of looks flat if you just take it in a regular photo mode. At least that's what happens with the iPhone. The only pain in the arse is if I have to lay down for a good shot. My elbows would be hot from the heat, and there are my cats outside who don't do boundaries. Dude, cats don't do boundaries at all. One of the things I'm working on, like I'm trying to get a lot done this week because I'm going to go to mom's and help her out and just basically make tacos this weekend. I love tacos. So I'm going to go there and hang out, and I don't want to have to worry about a lot of just normal work stuff. And also, I know that if I did worry about normal work stuff, her cat would not be letting it get done. Like, she works from home a couple days a week, and she says the cat is always up there walking all over everything. I don't think it's just yours. Cats are awesome, though. Like, I find cats to be pretty rad. See, hello everyone. Sorry, Gavin couldn't make it today. He's working on a comic about me and my bros. He has to step in. Sorry for being late. No worries, Leo. Appreciate you guys stopping by. Cow, how thick is the copper wire? Oh man. Tragic. Can you help me out with yours? I don't know. It's not very thick. It's pretty thin. Because it's got to fit. Let me see here. What do I have on the desk? A lot of NECA. So let me see here. Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell here. Let me stop the screen. It's kind of hard to tell, but maybe you'll get kind of the idea. This Raphael's about a 1/12 scale figure. And you want it thin enough. This is awkward. You want it thin enough where it can basically slide in between the leg and the body. So it's a pretty thin piece of copper wire. I can't tell you exactly how thick. I just know that it's pretty thin. It's probably the thinnest that I found at the time, to be perfectly honest. But Raph here wasn't even a great example. I just don't have, like, a Mafex, it works really well. A Marvel Legends figure, a G.I. Joe, like any Hasbro, it works really well. Whew. All right, let's get back to sharing that screen in case something else comes up. All righty. Raj, I also tilt my phone in photo shoots to take more dynamic Photoshop because if it's just straightforward, then the picture would usually just look bland unless I'm going for something specific. See, that's what we're talking about, man. The angles are key. Angles, diagonals. It's always just a little more interesting when things are going on. There's a lot more action when things have an angle to them. So that's a great call, man. Appreciate it. Tragic. Another good tip when using a phone, use a stand and use the pen or an auto shutter or timer to keep the shot steady. You know what? What Tragic just brought up there is great advice, especially if it's difficult. You don't have just glass sitting around to use for the flying and the jumping and all that stuff. If you have something like that to keep a tripod or to keep a camera still, to keep a smartphone totally still, you can make the same thing work with the wire by taking 2 shots. It's just I don't have a tripod that holds it really that still, so I don't think about it. Like the tripod I've got is this tiny little wavy rubbery thing that doesn't get it done. But if you got a real tripod for your smartphone, you could make the copper wire trick work. And yeah, he's not wrong about the shutter. When I'm using my real camera, I have a shutter release on it just because I don't want to gamble shaking the camera. See, can you do toy photography with a tablet? You know, I bet you can, but I've not done it. There's an app called Expert Raw that really gives you camera control. Awesome. Is that a droid specific app, or is that something that a poor peon like me could find? Ironic. Just sent you a message on IG with an example using cotton and LED for smoke. Ironic. I appreciate it, man. Thank you. Check it out. I've seen on the internet that people have been making some pretty, excuse my language, excuse my language, badass pictures of me and my bros out of toys. They're pretty cool. Good call, good call. They look good. Let's see. I have 9-gauge wire. All right, ironic. Appreciate it. See, custom action figures, you can do some pretty cool pictures. Like, for example, a screen accurate action figure in a toy photography that looks awesome. Oh, yeah, man. They're making good stuff, and the customs make them even better. It's craziness. If you use a tripod and slow shutter speed and move figures to create blur or ghosting effect, that's a good call too. I didn't think of that when it comes to like things to consider, so I am going to add that a little bit. If you can move stuff very slowly, and it's one thing I do with my camera or with my phone. I've talked a little bit about the Best Nightlight app on the phone, right? And so what I do is when I'm trying to get, say, some light hitting them a little more specifically, hitting the figures a little more specifically, like I want a little bit more light, I will set a slower shutter speed and I'll hit the light and just do this so that the light covers the area that I want it to cover. So if you do that, you're going to hit all that stuff, and it's a really cool effect. But let me put that on here right now. Slow shutter speed for blur. And moving figures for blur. There we go. Cool beans. Appreciate it, ironic. Now, most important thing in toy photography are the beautiful backgrounds. We have the background all set. Awesome sauce. See, okay, and a laser pointer for some cool effects too. That's a good, I've never used a laser pointer. Look at this. Heck yeah, ironic. I appreciate that, man. Laser pointer could be fun. Oh, by the way, everybody, and I forgot to bring this up earlier, and I wanted to. We've been talking a lot on the stream about Monster Force figures, and man, can't wait till Monster Force comes out so we can see how good the figures are and all that. Robo Don't Know on his channel today put up a review of the Monster Force figures. They look amazing. Like they move really well. The one that I like, there's a heavy infantry. Let's see. It's the one that works for the Forgotten King. And the heavy infantry, he's the green one. He looks awesome. So if you guys haven't seen that yet, be sure to check it out, especially if you want to try that, if you want to give that line a shot. Not to mention, if you get a certain action figure from a TV show or movie and background from said movie or a TV show, let's see, or a comic, recreate that in toy photography. Beautiful. Yeah, we talked a little bit about comic cover reference. We could do that with pages and all that stuff. That's awesome. Yeah, I really like using a laser pointer to backlight blast effects. This is what I'm talking about, guys. Again, I know, I understand the principles of photography. It's the principles of thinking about things like this that my brain just absolutely dies on. So I appreciate you bringing that up, guys. That's awesome. See, dudes, my favorite toy photography are Godzilla ones. They look so cool and awesome. I am not surprised that Mikey would like the Godzilla pics. That's good stuff. Okay, so I think what we've gotten here, general guidelines, I think we're pretty good. We've got the background, the foreground, the midground. We've got the contrast. We've got dioramas for immersion, props, lighting, angles. I think those are things that we all need to really worry about when we're putting this stuff together. Not worry about, but just these are things that almost all photos should probably have in them. And then these things to consider are just awesome little tools and tips that people have been coming up with to help out with more image specific or pose specific things. So definitely check this list out as well. So anybody that's catching this on the replay, or even anybody looking at it now, go ahead and take a screen grab. I'll sit here for just a sec. La da 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 da. And, you know, like I say, if you don't get the screen grab now, well, hey, just watch this again. Give me those minutes. And then general guidelines here. I'll leave this up so you can take your screen grab of all those things, because I think these are really good things to consider. And I think it would help everybody. Anybody that's really trying to improve their photography, I just think the general guidelines are pretty good things to keep in mind. And I think the things to consider, which sort of sounds like the same deal going on when we're talking a little more, I guess, specific, depending on what we're shooting, I think these are great things to keep in mind. So if anybody has anything else, let's hear it. If not, we'll call it. See, not to mention what those new Sonic 3 action figures, and I'm pretty sure that toy photographers are going to have a ball posing those guys, because they have 15 points of articulation, I think. Huh. I do not know my Sonic. But I think we've pretty much got it all covered. I'll ask once more. We'll see if anybody's going to answer here for me, because I want to know what on the website I can do to make it so you want to check it out, so you would enjoy your time on the website. Right now, the only pages I have done, and they're both linked in the description below, are the About page and the Collection page. And to say done on collection, I'm constantly adding photos. Think of the Collection page as also the Toypixx gallery page. So I'm constantly adding photos to that, so it's never going to be done. But for all intents and purposes, the layout's done. I'm pretty happy with it. So if you'll link and check that out, that's, I think, a good page for people to just hang out at and see what the figures are and everything else. The About, I mean, that's done. You probably read that once and you don't need to go back. So I'm trying to figure out what are the things on the website I can do to really make it so you think, oh man, I want to go check out Toypixx and see what the latest thing he's got going on is. And yeah, I might just ask that at a different stream if I don't get some answers. Oh, for a Sonic, you get a blue light and trail it behind him. It makes it look like he's running super fast. That's a good call, like a blue laser light. That would be a lot of fun. How to place to go, let's see, to upload users' photos to see each other our work, or show each other our work. I thought about that. I think that one thing, you know what? That's even better than what I was thinking, Harry. I was thinking when we really start ramping up the photo contests, to put them on the Toypixx page so that people could see what's up, what they like, and all that stuff. But you being able to upload it yourself would be even better for me. So let me look into that, look into the logistics a little bit. That was in the plan, is to make sure and showcase everybody's work on the page itself, or on the site itself. I just need to figure out the logistics for making it happen. But I appreciate you bringing that up. Let's see, Movie Sonic's electricity. You can use hot glue and make it into electricity, and then put blue lights in there. Oh, that sounds cool too. That's a good idea. Like hot glue, like blue LEDs surrounded by hot glue. Lights surrounded by hot glue. I think I like that idea. Basically, this whole stream, it's not me firing off ideas. It's getting ideas I can totally bogart from you guys. All right, folks. I would say that's it. I'd say we're gonna call it. So, as always, thank you very much for stopping by. I massively appreciate it. And hopefully you got something out of this. Like I said, come back. Let me hide this and come back, take screenshots if you need to of this stuff, or just write whatever down super fast. I'll go up here too right now, since I probably had things obscuring everything. And you can take screen grab, see what's up. And there you go. Hopefully this has been helpful. And until next time, have fun. Happy snapping. See ya. Now I'm going to hit end stream and it's going to be all